Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you find that I have an especially sexy voice today, that's probably because I've got COVID, and that's also the reason why this video is going to be kinda short, but I really wanted to make it. So, since this is a channel where I talk about my experiences with reading and I try spreading the joy of reading out to all of you, especially those of you that haven't read that much yet. So, in this video, there have been a lot of books where I've just thought that this is going to be too difficult, I won't get through this, but then read it and realized that what was I thinking? This wasn't hard at all. So in this video I'm just going to go through the books where I've had these experiences and been glad I gave the books a shot. So just let's get to it. For those of you that watch all my videos, I'm sorry because the first books I'm talking about are these ones. So I recently read 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami, and I've read quite a few of his books by now, but Haruki Murakami was a name that often came up when talking about the Nobel Prize for Literature, and that alone scares me a bit. Also, when you look at Murakami, he looks like a very intelligent person, and like the title of this one, 1Q84, it just screams a bit. I would call it pretentiousness, but it makes sense when you read the books. But either way, I was a bit scared of reading his books in general. But now when I've read them, I'm not scared at all. I started out reading What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, and that's a memoir style book, pretty straightforward, but that's sort of the book that made me read the rest of them, because I really liked the language and he seems like a really cool person. That also means something to me, I guess. Maybe also you. But anyway, I've given him a shot and I can't say I regret at all. Also, these are kind of huge, so I would think that that scares off quite a few people, but don't be scared. But another person that only almost writes big books is this guy, Karl Ove Knausgård. So maybe one of our most famous Norwegian authors, and he has written like 3,000 pages about himself, which can be a bit boring. As a whole, I didn't think it was, but the thing is that my belief was that these books were going to be hard to read, like sentences that would make you like drift off and think about ancient Rome or anything. But it really is really straightforward. He has a lot of beautiful sentences, but they're not difficult at all. Also, he talks about his whole life in the smallest piece of detail, and that's the most difficult thing about these ones. It's reading about how he feels about clipping his own toenails, I would say. That's like, you have to get through that, also like a 400 pages memoir about Hitler, but then you're all set. And you don't have to read these books. It's just like for me to tell you that if you're scared, do not be scared. Next one up is no other than Shakespeare. So here we have Hamlet and Macbeth. I'm currently reading Macbeth, so I'm not finished with it. But Hamlet was really the story where I started reading, and it occurred to me that this is really, in many terms, it's quite modern. Of course, this has been translated about 1 million times, and this translation to Norwegian by Edvard Hoem is especially good, I find. But it's like, you think that this is, or I thought that this was going to be difficult, slow, and without anything happening at all, and then I would like die on the inside in the meantime. But it really didn't. It's like people get stabbed, and then it just says die, and then next scene, they're on a hill, someone is stabbed again, and then it's just very, I almost said fulfilling, but it's at least very entertaining, and it feels, as I said, modern. It's like not like you think that, well, this is ancient. I would recommend you reading Shakespeare if you've thought about him as someone that is going to be hard to read. For you people living in the States or in Australia or England or anywhere else where you speak English, it's like, I guess you would have read some Shakespeare by now. We read some Shakespeare in schools here, but not on the same level, I would assume. For classics in general, I feel like you as a reader, you sort of dry out. It's all the mention of the years and the people and who is related to who, and it's just boring. So I think that's my issue with classics in general. It's not that it's difficult, which I've always thought that all classics are difficult. Now I know sort of which classics are going to be harder to read, but in general they're just slow paced, and that's my biggest gripe with them. So I think that sums it up. The next one on the list is sort of a funny one, and it's Jon Fosse. So Jon Fosse recently won the Nobel Prize for Literature, as I assume many of you know. And when he won, the whole Norwegian public started talking about him. And the thing is that Jon Fosse, so I'm from the western part of Norway, so is Jon Fosse. And Jon Fosse is just a stereotypical person from the west side of this country. He is introverted. He doesn't really like talking to people. He likes it down here, not up here. He's not a very energetic person. So when he won the award, one of my favorite quotes from him is that he was on the western part of Norway when he got this award, and when the newspaper got to him, they asked him like, how does it feel? And he said like, I'm very happy I'm not in Oslo, which is where I'm now, in the eastern part. And that's just very him, I feel. But the thing is, when people started talking about him winning this award, they started talking about how difficult it was to read Jon Fosse, while the people that grew up on the western part or lived there, they're sort of like, what do you mean? It's very easy to read Jon Fosse. It's just like your every other tale, just better. And this, I feel, describes him quite well. I find it difficult to compare his writing to other ones because there are no full stops. There is just, each book is just one giant sentence, and it is kind of repetitive. And sometimes I feel it can get a bit boring. I know many would disagree, but I don't find it difficult. I find how he talks about God and religion, and you can put a lot of stuff into it, but it's all about you, it's not about him, because he writes and you can sort of choose what you want to get out of his books, but it's not like he makes it difficult for you. He makes it intriguing because you have a lot of questions maybe, but it's up to you to find the answers. I hope that made sense. Anyway, I find Jon Fosse to be the perfect example to have in this video because he himself is kind of this mystical person, and you, as a reader, can read these books as children's literature, or you can read them as a holy scripture where you have to analyze everything you read. And it's up to you, but it's not difficult to read. Unless you're from the eastern part of Norway, I guess. Or it seems. I'm not judgmental. Last book I thought I'd speak about is Thomas Mann and Buddenbrooks. So Thomas Mann, the name just sounds profound. It's like a statement. Thomas Mann. I don't know. It's something about the name, him winning the Nobel Prize for Literature, and Buddenbrooks, a bit mystical. A total package of something that made me feel like this was going to be confusing. But as long as you have sort of, and this might be a tip, always when I read books that have a lot of people in them, I go to internet and I find like an overview of people in the novels. What I would like to have is like an internet service that provided these maps where you could click on each level of the tree, because often people die or like things happen that you really don't want to hear about. So I would like the place where I could go and just choose the people I wanted to view, but in relation to other people that I knew from the story, if you catch my drift. Each time I go to one of these maps, I view people that have been killed or have married another person in the book, and then it's a bit spoiled for me. But when reading classics, that shouldn't mean all that much, because it's something in me that just wants to get through them. All this to say that there aren't that many difficult books. You just have to get an overview over them, take your time, and maybe just put them down if they're being too complicated. You can research, or you can just put it away, or take it into your hands on a later stage. There are so many possibilities. So I think that's it for this video. If you have books you thought were going to be complicated to read, please leave them below so we can unscare some people. I hope you have a terrific weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!